The terrorist organization of Hezbollah is shooting a lot of rockets into towns in northern Israel as things are heating up every single day on Israel's border with Lebanon. President Joe Biden enjoys eating ice cream while simultaneously trying to stop Israel from completely destroying Hamas in Gaza. Now, the IDF just presented Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with a plan to evacuate the Palestinian civilians out of Rafah in southern Gaza so the IDF can go in and eliminate the rest of the Hamas terrorists who are holed up there in holes in the ground like the bunch of savage cowards that they are. All this and more on today's show. I'm Josiah, and this is the Israel Guys. Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of Jew hatred and anti-Israel propaganda, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Welcome to the show today. First, make sure to subscribe to the Israel Guys on YouTube. Hit that notification button. Also, hit the like button. It helps us out, get more information out to more people. You can follow us on all our social media platforms if you haven't already. The links are all down in the description below. Thank you so much for doing that. Also, reminder: this is one of your last chances to sign up to enter this month's giveaway. We're giving away a huge bundle of the Israel Guys merch and other great Israel-inspired products down there, worth almost $200. So make sure to subscribe for that. The link is down in the description below. Sign up. We'll be picking the winner for the bundle at the end of the month, just in a couple of days. All right, guys, great to be back here in the studio with you this week. As you may or may not have seen on our channel and on social media, the Israel Guys were in Nashville all of last week for the NRB conference there, the National Religious Broadcasters in Nashville at the Opryland Hotel. We had a great week. We partnered up with an organization called Israel 365 and created a war room experience and led tours through the week. Last week, we had representatives of the IDF that would give a briefing about with a map. Had like a map room set up. Basically, people could come through this war room. We had a short 11-minute documentary film about what happened on October 7th. We had a map room. They got a briefing from an IDF representative. Then we had a hostage room where each tour met with families of the hostages, heard their story, heard what was happening there. And then we had a social media command center where we talked about the war that's waging in the media and on social media against the state of Israel and how people could combat that with their own social media platforms and help the people of Israel there. Overall, we had a very, very productive, it was a great week, great to connect to all the other Christian broadcasters in America, the big convention when they all get together, and a lot of people really support Israel, and it was great to see the interest and the strong show of support from the Christian community there in Nashville, gathering together for the NRB conference. We also held a large pro-Israel rally there. Had quite a few people show up for that rally there. And overall, it was a very great week, great experience, and great to connect and rally the Christian community around what's happening in Israel and get people to stand up and show their support for Israel, not only just in the war, but also in the showing support for Israel being able to keep the land of Israel in conjunction with Keep God's Land. Because right now there's a push, and there has been for the last several decades, but specifically right now that our President Joe Biden is pushing, again, this two-state solution. Everybody's talking about the two-state solution. What happens after Israel finishes in Gaza? Okay, let's push the two-state solution now. And basically, the two-state solution is a cover-up for giving away the land of Israel, giving away God's land to God's enemies and the enemies of the state of Israel. So we had it was a good conference. We had a lot of amazing speakers there, just encouraging everybody to stand up for the land of Israel, stand up and encourage Israel to keep the land of Israel and not give it away in any attempts for peace to the enemies of Israel. All right, so we're going to jump into the news for today. What's happening in Israel? The border with Lebanon is heating up every single day. very soon there could be some sort of it could be more of a large-scale war with Lebanon. Prime Minister Netanyahu said they don't know exactly what's going to happen with Lebanon. Maybe they can obtain a ceasefire or some sort of peace agreement with Hezbollah through diplomatic means. Seems more unlikely. But right now there's 100,000 Israelis that have been evacuated out of northern towns in Israel on the border with Lebanon because of the attacks by Hezbollah. And basically that's an untenable situation. These Israelis need to return home. So however that can be achieved could be some sort of a military operation from Israel. We don't know exactly what's happening there. But this morning, around 30 to 40 rockets were shot into Israel. This is one of the larger barrages that have taken place in recent days. Also, yesterday, there was a volley of 60 rockets launched into northern Israel from Lebanon, from Hezbollah. And Hezbollah stated that the attack was actually in response to an airstrike yesterday, an Israeli airstrike that killed a senior member of Hezbollah up in the Baalbek region of Lebanon. Baalbek area of Lebanon. And so Hamas is saying, this was in response, but they launched these volleys of rockets, one last night and one this morning. I got the notifications on my phone when I woke up this morning as I was waking up. And Israel, thankfully, was very quick to respond and already responded to both of these barrages of rockets. Last night, they were able to locate where the rockets were shot from and actually destroyed that rocket launching site there. So Israel is continuing to, it's kind of like a back and forth on the border there. Hezbollah shoots rockets over or targets a military position. Then the IDF goes in goes in with the Air Force and hits specific strikes inside of Lebanon. Also, as what happened yesterday, they've been targeting the senior leaders of Hezbollah, trying to take out that leadership infrastructure and thus crumbling the leadership command and making the operations of Hezbollah much harder to carry out attacks against Israel. So continue to pray for Israel in the situation in the north as it seems to be only heating up. Unfortunately, it's not getting any calmer as the IDF is trying to finish up what's happening inside the Gaza Strip, which we're going to talk about in just 1 second. Join us to heed the call of God and embrace the people of Israel in warmth and care. It's freezing, wet, and dark, but Me'ir Panim is there with love and support, ensuring that the soldiers defending the Holy Land and its people are warm and fed. From over 1 million warm-cooked meals and delivered, even in the snow and rain, to over 6,000 mattresses, blankets, and pillows for soldiers braving the cold front lines, Me'ir Panim is there. They're delivering thousands of winter and combat essentials like ceramic vests, fleece, jackets, warm meals, helmets, medical kits, blankets, gloves, hats, and scarves. As they support thousands of evacuated families, many of whom lost loved ones in this war, they've been providing aid, food, and shelter. From providing furniture and appliances to small joys like pajama parties for the children who have had to flee their town on the border of Lebanon, buying them new slippers, pajamas, games, and toys. In the spirit of Proverbs 19:17, which says, "Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed." Join us in this divine mission to warm and feed every soldier and shelter and aid thousands of evacuated families. Stand with Israel. Support Me'ir Panim, and we can protect his children together. Click the link in the description below to donate today. President Joe Biden is still desperately trying to stop Israel from finishing Hamas, let's say, from destroying Hamas. Let's watch this clip real quick.
Can you give us a sense of when you think that ceasefire will start, sir?
Well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend. The end of the weekend. At least my national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
So a reporter, actually this is in an ice cream parlor in New York last night, Monday night. A reporter asked Joe Biden when we can expect a ceasefire deal to start, a ceasefire with Hamas to start. And Joe Biden's saying he's hoping that by next Monday, beginning of next week, that there will be a ceasefire with Hamas. Now, this is crazy because he calls it a ceasefire and basically talking about a ceasefire hostage deal potentially. But this is really, if you want to put it in like plain terms, this is Joe Biden's attempt, and he's constantly desperately trying to stop Israel from completely destroying Hamas in Gaza. A ceasefire hostage deal means letting Hamas off the hook, essentially. And a lot of these ceasefire negotiations have been taking place. A lot of the stipulations in the negotiations are saying that there should be a ceasefire in return for hostages, but that during the ceasefire, America will try their hardest to obtain a permanent end to the fighting in Gaza, so that by the end of the ceasefire, by the time the ceasefire runs out, then there'll be some sort of permanent ceasefire end of the fighting there. And this is not good for the nation of Israel, because Israel needs to continue to completely destroy Hamas inside of Gaza, and there's a lot of terrorists that they have not reached yet, and that they're trying to reach, basically that. Another part of the ceasefire hostage deal would be releasing a crazy amount of Palestinian terrorists. They call them Palestinian prisoners, which they obviously in Israeli prisons, so they are. But these guys are terrorists, releasing a crazy skewed ratio of terrorists for hostages held inside of Gaza. The latest report I saw in the hostage deal negotiations are 10-to-1 ratio. It's talking about 400 Palestinian terrorists for 40 of the hostages held inside of Gaza. Now, this is absolutely crazy, because these Palestinian terrorists, if they were released, endanger many more Israeli civilians than the hostages that would be released. And it's a very hard thing to say, because everybody wants the hostages to come home. We need these people to be home with their families, back reunited with their families. But unfortunately, it does not make sense to do that at the risk of many more Israeli civilian lives being lost. The better solution would be for Israel to obtain the release of the hostages through military pressure, pressuring and squeezing Hamas so much that they force Hamas to release the hostages by military pressure, and actually eliminating Hamas. Hamas would have no other choice than to give up these hostages back to Israel. That is the better solution, not caving and showing the weak hand and saying, okay, we'll release to you a whole bunch of terrorists for the hostages that are inside the Gaza Strip. Now, yesterday, Netanyahu spoke with Brian Kilmeade on Fox News about the IDF's plan to evacuate the civilian population out of Rafah in southern Gaza. And this would be prior to a military operation. Right now, Israel is planning a military operation to go in and take out the last 4 battalions of Hamas terrorists that are holed up inside of Gaza. And if you want to know more about that plan, Luke talked about that on yesterday's show, so make sure and go and watch that. But Netanyahu spoke about the new plan that was just presented to him by the IDF to evacuate the civilians out of Gaza. Let's watch this clip.
I want you to hear what Jake Sullivan just warned you guys about. He knows you're going to go into Rafah. He warns you, you better not go in without a plan to get the civilians out. Listen.
Talking about more than 1 million people who have been pushed into this small space in Gaza because of military operations elsewhere. It's also the area where all of the humanitarian assistance comes into Gaza to serve all of Gaza. And so we've been clear that we do not believe that an operation, major military operation, should proceed in Rafah unless there is a clear and executable plan to protect those civilians, to get them to safety, and to feed, clothe, and house them. And we have not seen a plan like that.
Have you heard this plan since he said that yesterday? And have the Americans been briefed on your plan?
Well, actually, last night I had a meeting with the General Staff and the Security Cabinet, and the Army showed us the plan, a double plan, one for the evacuation and humanitarian assistance of the civilian population in Rafah, and second, the elimination of the remaining quarter, roughly, of the Hamas terrorist battalions that are in Rafah. We can't leave them there, because that's like leaving a quarter of ISIS in place in a defined territory. You wouldn't do that. And in fact, you didn't do it. So we're not going to do that either. But we do have a combined plan of evacuating civilians out of harm's way and destroying those battalions. I can tell you that Hamas will be doing everything in their power to make sure that we don't evacuate the civilians, because they actually try to stop them at gunpoint and often at gunfire. But that's not going to stop us. We won't give them immunity. We'll get the population out. We'll continue the job to achieve total victory. Total victory is how you win the war, and total victory is how you win the peace. You can't win the peace if you don't win the war.
I know you're taking out 18 of 24 Hamas battalions, but they said you've only taken out 30% of Hamas higher-ups. Many are hiding in the tunnels below. If America tells you, don't go into Rafah, will you go in anyway?
Well, we'll go in, we make our own decisions, obviously, but we'll go in based on the idea of having also the evacuation of the civilians. By the way, I agree with the U.S. on this. I don't have a different position, because our strategy right now has always been, from the beginning, to try to get civilians out of harm's way, and we've been largely successful. The ratio of civilians to combatants killed in Gaza is now down below 1-to-1, which is just unheard of in this kind of crowded urban warfare. Right. But again, we'll do our best to get as many of them out. They'll have the opportunity to leave. That's not an American position. That's my position.
So a quarter of Hamas terrorists are still left inside of Rafah, this southern town inside of Gaza. And what Netanyahu is saying is this is not an option for Israel to leave these terrorists there. Just say, okay, we got most of the terrorists, but we got all but one quarter. We're just going to leave them there in southern Gaza, and we're going to be done. I mean, his parallel to ISIS, leaving a quarter of ISIS in a specific area, that's just a great correlation, because, yeah, in American thinking, and this is what America did too, you do not leave a quarter of terrorists, a quarter of ISIS in one position. These people are terrorizing, killing, murdering civilians. These are terrorists. We're talking about terrorism, terrorist people. And yeah, this is not an option. Just leave them inside of Gaza. You have to go in and you have to completely destroy as many as possible, completely destroy their infrastructure, even if you don't get every single last one of the terrorists. But it is important to point out that Israel has a plan to evacuate the civilians and destroy the terrorists. Now, the whole entire world, including Joe Biden and the American administration, has been telling Israel, do not go into Rafah. You can't go into Rafah because it's going to be what do people call it, a genocide. It's going to be a civilian disaster, whatever, a warfare disaster. No, Israel is creating a plan, and they just came up with a plan to evacuate the civilians from Gaza. And it's not just to evacuate the civilians, but also to go in and take out the terrorists that are holed up inside of Rafah. And I think it is important to point out to what Netanyahu was just talking about with the civilian to terrorist killed ratio. And of course, you'd never want to talk about ratios and numbers when it comes to people dying, especially when it comes to civilians dying. Any civilian death is terrible. But it is important to know, because people accuse Israel of genocide inside the Gaza Strip. People are just throwing out that term. Most people, I don't think, even know what the term means. But saying that a genocide is happening inside of Gaza. No, Israel's civilian to terrorist kill ratio, and it's even hard to say, but like, it's less than one. That means less than one civilian has died for every single Hamas terrorist that has been taken out. And people are throwing out around the number that I think Hamas put out that there's been 24,000 Gazans that have died, and that's including terrorists, by the way. So that means that you have that many terrorists that Israel has killed, that many terrorists that were inside of Gaza that Israel has gone in and killed. And by the way, these numbers are unprecedented in any other modern urban warfare. The unprecedented low numbers for civilians to combatants killed. The other wars are much higher. You have more, 5, 6, 7 civilians killed for every single terrorist combatant killed. So Israel is doing an incredible job. Unfortunately, some civilians do die, and a lot of that has to do with Hamas using them as human shields. And so some civilians do die, but Israel is doing their utmost to avoid that and limit the number of civilian casualties inside of Gaza. And unfortunately, Israel has a plan to evacuate the civilians in Rafah, but unfortunately, Hamas, like Netanyahu said, is going to do their utmost to try to stop those civilians from exiting. So that is another thing that we can continue to pray for as we pray for the nation of Israel and support Israel in their this war to return peace and security to the citizens of Israel as they go in and take out the terrorists. That Israel would be able to smoothly evacuate the civilians out of harm's way as they go in. They would be able to go in and take out all of these terrorists. And that Hamas would not use these people as their human shields trying to keep them safe, keep the terrorists safe behind the bodies of civilians, women and children inside of Gaza. It's a very, very terrible stuff, guys. This is very complicated stuff. But what's not complicated is that Israel is winning this war, and that Israel has every right to win this war and every obligation to win this war. They have an obligation to the nation of Israel. They have an obligation to the citizens of Israel. They have an obligation to the families of those who are killed, of those who are taken hostage inside of Gaza, to go in, finish off Hamas, and obtain total victory. Total victory is the cry, and Israel needs to obtain that inside the Gaza Strip. Guys, don't forget to check out Meir Panim, support Meir Panim, and help feed IDF soldiers and evacuated Israeli families here inside of Israel. Don't forget to subscribe, get that conversation going down below. We love interacting with you down in the comments. Remember, as always, tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening here in the land of Israel. We'll be back every day, Monday through Friday, with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.